So let's start kind of at the beginning of my journey. To start day one. Oh, maybe not that one, but that one. How about here? Let's. Is it possible to get rid of that? Oh, there we go. Okay. And that's me. First day of high school. 14, full of joy, full of pluck. How naive I was. And that was kind of the look of my first teacher that I got. He was not amused. Actually, he was my geometry teacher, and throughout the year he told me that I just amount to nothing in life, and I am just gonna drop out and work at McDonald's. And I took part of his advice, but we'll get to that later. And neither were my fellow classmates were very, very happy either. I'd say it was a pretty depressing environment, and it wasn't just one teacher that told people to work at McDonald's and to drop out and you're not going to amount to anything in life. It was like a multitude of teachers. You know, it was maybe one or two exceptions tops. And we even had, like, sometimes we had pat downs, and I call this mandatory child molestation, because you get, if you go to school, or if you don't go to school, your parents can get arrested and you could be sent to like a foster home for truancy. So you really have to go through this whole process if you don't want to get arrested or sent to a foster home. It's pretty terrible. We were locked in our classrooms. We could not even leave to go to the bathroom. People peed in their pants because we had German shepherds that were searching through all of our lockers and to see if we had drugs, and they announced like the stats. We got 2 druggies today, and it was terrible. And I'm from North Idaho, so this was pretty much in Coeur d'Alene High School. And I was pretty sad. You know, sometimes I was like, there was so much pressure. Like, I had to do probably about a dozen essays a week, and I made the mistake of saving them all to the last day. But I think that was me in the fetal position with notice the rock hard abs. And even if I started getting up on my feet again, I just kind of get pushed right back down. It was unfortunate. Like, I even had some of my here. Go back. It's bad. I even had one of my peers. He made a website that would just make fun of me and mock me and be a blog, and it was pretty terrible experience I had. And you know, that from my students now, not just my teachers. But my school, I'd say it limited my creativity quite a bit. It like I said, terrible teachers, terrible environment, but I did find hope in this thing called robotics. And this was quite before high school, and I was part of this robotics team that I actually started when I was about 6 or 7, and I thought of the name the Panic-Stricken Brainy Chickens. As you can see me holding a chicken and a chicken hat, and I was the egg, very white. And it was such an amazing experience. And when I was in high school, I kind of upped it from Legos quite a bit, and I was building the robot. We had to raise money to buy the parts for the robot, and we also had to learn how to code to build that robot. So I did all that, and it turns out when I got a C- in my geometry class, my total GPA was actually a 2.1 back when I was in high school. But it turns out that I was doing geometry. I was tricked. I was doing geometry with my robot. Who knew? You had to solder things. You had to cut the metal in a certain way. And see, this robot actually, it could shoot a frisbee across a football field and climb. Right now, it's at the top of a pyramid. So it's as you can see, there's the 3 bars there. So we had to latch onto it and then climb with an arm, pull itself up, and then back. So, and that was my team when I was younger, and I was so lucky to have that such amazing experience. We had to think of a project as well too. We actually, it seems pretty obvious, but it turns out if you turn off the computers at night, it saves energy. And we worked that out where it saved the local school district in North Idaho $120,000 per year. So that was just kind of our team of 5 or 6 there, of 7 or 8 or 9-year-olds. I just, why don't you just turn the computers off at night? And in that terrible, awful pat downs and dog searches of my high school, I decided to drop out on. I was actually kind of nervous about it. It was more my parents and my brother were the big advocates for me to drop out and leave the education system. And speaking of my brother, a couple of years ago, he went to this thing. He won't be happy with me with this picture. But a few years ago, there goes the bell. He told me about this cool thing called Bitcoin, and this was when it was worth like $10. And he bought 40 of them, and just to spite him, I think I was like 11 or something, I bought 100. And that was just with all the Christmas money. I'd never spent a single dollar of my Christmas money until that point, which added up to about $1,000. So that paid off for me later. And it went to, if you don't know, it went to a high of $1,200, I think. And I think that was at its peak. And I sold it the day before the price crashed. And if you don't know what Bitcoin is, it's this virtual currency, completely decentralized, completely does not belong to any government, and is belonged by the people that use it. And I was able to, when the price was high, just kind of how stocks fluctuate, I sold it, and then the next day it crashed. So I was able to make $100,000 of that, and at the time I was just turned 15, I think. So that was kind of nice. I was able to drop out with $100,000. And I was able to read this book, and it was called Without Their Permission, and that really inspired me to be pretty entrepreneurial in my endeavors. And his actually, Lex Ohanian was the guy who wrote the book, and he founded Reddit, if you know what that is, and Hitmonk and Breadpig, and all the mascots were a little alien or a little chipmunk. They were very cute. He drew them on a napkin, so you can really get good ideas from anywhere. So I took that $100,000 and that inspiration from that book. I started this company called Botangle, and what Botangle does, it allows you to get video chat tutoring from no matter where you are. And I actually sent it to my geometry teacher after I dropped out, and I said, "This is going to replace you." He never replied. So I had a problem, and I made something to fix it. So that was convenient. But I did not. The problem with starting a site which requires teaching, you need teachers, shockingly enough. So I decided to kind of expand my marketing effort, and taking inspiration from the founder of Reddit, I went on Reddit. And then there's this community on Reddit, and if you don't know what Reddit is, it's a site full of kind of mini communities. Like there's Reddit Funny or Reddit Science, and then they post stuff relating to that topic. And I went on Reddit Entrepreneur, and I told my story of how I made $100,000 on Bitcoin and started a business, and I'm 15 and 16 now. And it rose to the top of Reddit Entrepreneur, and I was really, really lucky because quite a few publications picked it up. Mashable was the first person to pick the story up, and that got 11,000 shares. And that went pretty viral. I was put on Business Insider, Huffington Post. I was actually trending on Twitter for a while, so that was pretty cool. I was kind of pretty surreal, actually. So I learned all these things, like not that I had this whole roadmap planned out. It actually took a lot of trial and error. And luckily enough, for a day, I was able to kind of, be viral around the world, and doing all these things, kind of taking it a day at a time. I was a businessman for the world. That was my business card photo a while ago. And I had to do taxes for a day. Many days, actually. That was quite the pain in the butt. But but the thing is, in North Idaho, there wasn't a lot of people like me, and I couldn't relate to a lot of people, which was, I was pretty, felt very alone. But then I found this community called the 20 Under 20 group or organization, and it was founded by Peter Thiel. And if you don't know who Peter Thiel is, he co-founded PayPal, which is cool, multi-billion-dollar company, and he's now a multi-billionaire. And he just kind of, probably to spite his teachers too, he created this fund which gives $100,000 to 20 teens every year to drop out of high school or to drop out of college. But I have not applied for that yet, but they do have a summit. So I went to that summit and found a bunch of people that were exactly like me, even younger than me. Like, I felt outdone by 13-year-olds and 10-year-olds. And I felt like a lot less adequate. But I was able to find this internship at this company while I was working on my own at the time, and it was in the Bay Area, and I think that was like an incredible place where I was able to find my people at this conference, which was in San Francisco, and they wanted to pay me $4,000 a month to do marketing for them, and that's what I love to do. And I get to live in Silicon Valley, so that was really neat. And this was, I'd say, is it going to do it? There we go. Have it slide in there. But this experience in Silicon Valley was completely surreal. There was people with smart phones, but also smart spoons, smart forks, smart knives, smart water coolers, and I think they had some smart food, smart water, and anything you can imagine it was connected to the cloud or had an app or something. And I met this guy. His name was Paul Graham, and he's quite the entrepreneur in the Bay Area, and he's invested in companies like Twitch or Reddit or Quora or Pebble, and just a multitude of companies. And he was pretty famous, and he wasn't too pleased. I interrupted him at breakfast. I waited for him outside the bathroom at this breakfast place, and then he was kind of like, oh, pretty shocked. Thought I was gonna, harass him or something. But then I was able to ask him a few questions with my friend there in the middle, and I asked to take a selfie with him. He wasn't too pleased, but I think he went for it. But kind of, I was able to find other people that I take selfies with that were equally not as pleased. Sometimes I'm by surprise. And but this was completely new to me, coming from North Idaho, effectively growing up on a farm, and feeding. I grew up on a llama farm, feeding llamas every morning, and this was completely different. Where if you were a millionaire, it was like, oh, millionaire, please. You have to be a billionaire or have some importance, and it was just surreal. It was kind of like living in utopia. And but there is problems being a 15-year-old living in Silicon Valley. There's quite a lot of networking events and or loud parties. And they actually were good networking events. There's the previous CEO of Google was at one, his name is Eric Schmidt, also equally wonderful name, Eric's Unite. And but I couldn't get into these because they did have alcohol, which made me kind of sad. Sad Keenan. And but I did. I was able to continue working on Botangle and continue progressing it and increase my reputation in the valley, so that was convenient. But I also did this side project called Intern for a Day, and the company I was working at, they had this office space, like a communal one where they shared with quite a lot of other companies. And I organized all those companies together and just got probably 200 of my friends that I met in the Bay Area. Pretty much everyone I met in the Bay Area, I got them all together. And they were able to intern at a company for a day. And there was 200 people that showed up. That's probably somewhere upstairs. But that was a lot of fun. We had piñatas, and we had the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, where we had probably about 50 people just dunk themselves in the coldest of water. And that was cool. And then we also had people that never really gotten to code before, and we're just kind of taking things a day at a time, and they were able to make a full-fledged keyboard, but you could just take any surface and make it a touchpad. So you can make it a keyboard, you can make it a dance thing or a DJ thing, and just completely going from nothing, of not learning how to code, to be able to turn any surface into a touchpad was completely incredible. And I learned quite a lot. I'd say analyzing the education system, of running an ed tech company, having really great experiences in robotics, and really terrible, terrible experiences in high school. I'd say not many things have changed except the pat downs and then the dogs. I always like the analogy. 150 years ago, you had a teacher in front of 30 kids and a blackboard, and now today you have a teacher in front of 30 kids in front of a whiteboard, and a huge difference. But what I found actually in my studies is that, like, kids are naturally born. They want to learn every single thing they can, and they and I actually have some like data to back this up and some examples. For example, there's this one kid. He's 12, and he's like a pretty, like, his apps have gone to the top charts, #1 in the App Store, and you can see, if you can see it. It's called Bustin' Jeeber, where it's an app, whereas Whack-A-Mole for Justin Bieber's face. So, got a TED Talk for that one. And there's this other kid who kind of took his own education into his own hands, and I think this is the second most watched TED Talk of all time. And he's just 13, way braver than me to wear that, hoodie. And I think he looked like a hippie on purpose. But he kind of did a kind of homeschooling, but also made it his own. And so for essays, he wrote about skiing, which was his passion, or surfing, and it was kind of a blend of non-traditional education, but with a dash of traditional in there as well. But what I found actually is kids, generation by generation, and I saw this thing back in the 1930s. They started tracking the IQ levels of kids every generation. They found every decade people a generation increases their IQ by 7 points. Like, I'd say in the past, the toys were the classic pet rock and maybe like a toy car, but now we have kits like this, which is a Kano kit, and it allows you to make your own computer, like, very easily. You just kind of connect it together, and there's a keyboard, and it teaches you to learn how to code or learn how to design. And they take kind of traditional games like Minecraft, and they teach you how to make like a mod for it, which allows you to like make green grass, purple grass, or whatever you want. And drones is another very intricate toy that I don't think like a generation ago people would really understand as well. And like, it's just incredible that I see people like there's this 10-year-old friend, my neighbor, and he's just flying drones and making his own drones. He made this Millennium Falcon that had kind of that drone I was pointing at my laptop screen, and as a thing, and he made it out of styrofoam. So I just kind of saw in the sky like a Millennium Falcon running around. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. And I'm 16, and this kid's like 10, and I'm just shocked. And the top-rated app in the kids section of the App Store is an app that teaches you how to cook in a fun, playful way. And I've failed at it many, many times. I think I'm a student for life. I'll be eating ramen noodles. But there's all these kind of tools and kits that popular toys like drones or like Kano kits, it got funded for millions of dollars on Kickstarter, that were insanely popular. And I just think, actually back in the 1932, they estimated the average IQ for a kid was 80. And that kind of seems surreal now. And the normal average today is 100. And 100 was kind of insane back in 1932. And now it's the norm, and this data is from 2010. And now, probably in the next 10 years, next probably 70 years, the norm will probably be 130 or higher. And that's being conservative. It's called the Flynn effect, where each generation increases in IQ, and they've, like I said, been tracking this since the 1930s. It's incredible. And you can see it goes up higher and higher and higher and higher. And then there's actually a story, I think this was in the most popular TED Talk of all time, and it was done by Sir Ken Robinson, and he made the example that there was this one teacher or this one parent that was kind of disgruntled, like, oh my god, my kid isn't learning well, not getting good grades, isn't doing real well. And then the teacher just turned on the radio, and then immediately the little girl just started dancing. And then she went on Broadway, and she like leads up all the, she has her own like dance studio now, and then she led up the, it's like on the board of the UK kind of dancing school or whatever, or the equivalent of Broadway. But I have noticed in schools that they like to brand people with ADHD just because they're energetic and kind of maybe not focused. And I'd say that's completely understandable. They have all this stimuli, like the drones, like the Kano kits, and then they suddenly get slapped into a system that hasn't changed for 150 years. And I'd say the reason it hasn't changed in 150 years is because or at least I found in my experiences, is when the customer changes from, in this case, the parent, and it becomes the state or the government, it kind of freezes in time. And I always like the example, I think, this was a very small voice, I think, in the 70s, but they wanted to socialize IBM mainframes and wanted them to be kind of put in local libraries. And now, like, that's not even imaginable to have a mainframe anymore. Now you have like a phone in your pocket that does more than what took you to get to the moon. And I think I'd say when you so by socializing that, you don't let the private industry take care of it. And I'd say it'd be kind of like surreal to imagine if the government did not socialize that back 150 years ago. Like, think where we'd be. Like, think where automobiles were 150 years ago. If they existed, I think they're around then. Cell phone.